was doing medical transcription a long time. I was kind of managing a department, but I was doing ministry on the side. Very big call to ministry.
Mm,
And when they outsourced our department, they tried to hire me back, and I was like, nope, it's time for me to do something
different.
different. And so I knew I was entrepreneurial, and I knew I could do a lot of things, and so I just did it. I
Cool.
jumped in.
What's medical? What'd you say?
Medical transcription?
Yeah, what's that?
Well, now it's all digital. It's all voice recognition and everything. But back in the day, I feel very old saying that. But back in the day, it was you saw doctors who would transcribe. They would talk into a tape recorder
Yeah.
or a recording device, and then our department would be in charge of like typing it all out, making
wow.
sure everything was aligned, and then getting it into the patient chart.
I'm sure that
quickly.
was. I'm sure that was. I
Riveting.
feel like that'd be very stressful.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to know terminology. You have to know all this. So I did that for about 12 years. I actually did it for about 20 years because I was raising my kids, and I worked full time and raised my kids at home.
Okay.
So I kind of did the stay-at-home mom thing, but I also worked full time and I did ministry.
That's a busy life.
It was kind of dumb, but looking back, I'm like, I could have done some things differently, but I mean, I enjoyed being there for my kids. I even had this really cool, like, I didn't know what to do because the kids would just randomly be like, Mom, 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 Mom. They needed me, but I'm listening to the doctors, or I'm checking other people's work, and I have headphones on, and they're interrupting. Or I was on a call or something. And so we had this little code where they would come up to me, put their hand on my shoulder, and wait until I was at a good stopping point. And so we just had to modify our lives to make it work.
Now, for the medical transcribing, do they still do that today? Or is it more for like practicing hospitals?
At the end of my tenure, we were getting into like Dragon voice recognition stuff. And so we were just editing. So Dragon, it would
transcribe.
It would transcribe it, and then we would go in and make sure it was correct. And there were shortcut keys to like fix everything. And so I did a lot of quality assurance and, training and things like that. And I helped get that system up and running.
Now it makes sense. How many books did you read last year? Because this makes sense now.
Okay. 125.
125 freaking books.
Yeah,
that is so much.
Yeah, it was my first year doing that, actually. I love to read, but didn't really do it a lot before this.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of challenge myself, and so
well, I think you succeeded very well at 125 books.
My goal was 80, but it's kind of an addictive process. You like. You read one and then you got to read the sequel. And then there's, another book that pops up that's really interesting. And it gets on, I don't know if you know Libby, but it's like a library borrowing, digital borrowing.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden the next one would pop up and I'd be like, well, I got to finish this one so I can get to that one. And it just kind of, I don't know, became like a personal, one thing you'll know about me, I'm not super competitive with other people, super competitive with myself.
Okay.
So I'm constantly upping myself.
Books.
It makes sense.
Gosh, even 80 books, that's like a book and a half a week. And it takes me 6 months to finish a 150-page binder. Like, that's wild.
But it helps that it was, a lot of my books were fiction. They were joy reading.
Okay.
So, I mean, some of the more technical books that I read are leadership books. They go a little slower because I'm digesting things. But if it's a story,
you can kind of get lost in it and go along with it. Yeah.
It's like watching a movie. It's a different type. It's like movie in my head.
Yeah.
And so
I guess that makes sense. I never thought of that.
Yeah. It keeps you captured and it gives you momentum.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a fun goal. I don't know that I'll reach that this year, but.
Well. I won't be surprised if you hit 126.
Because secretly in the back of my head, I'm going to one up myself.
Yeah. So. self competitiveness. That's the best way to be.
I know. Everybody thinks with my personality, I had to be super competitive with others, but it's really just myself.
Yeah.
I want to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah. So how does that compare when people think you're a competitive person versus you're just, because I think I'm the same way.
Really?
Like, I'm not competitive with anybody else. Like, I'll have my moments, but 90% of the time it's like, how do I better me?
Yeah.
You know, because that brings the fire and like the
It
intensity and
it
stuff.
really does. Like, I can't control anybody else,
Right.
right? And I don't want to, but what I do want is I want to encourage other people. So if
Yeah.
they're winning at something, I'm cheering them along, even if they're my competitors. Sometimes
Right.
my husband's like, shh, you know, but I want to, I don't know. I love it when people win. And even if it's against me. Now, I will say there are times when my husband keeps beating me at something over and
Mm,
over and over again. It's relentless. I will get upset.
yeah.
That will make me upset sometimes, but it's not because of the competitive nature of it. It's just because it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
think that's how my sister and I,
Oh
my
yeah.
spoons champion, little spoon trophy right there,
Oh,
spoons
look.
champion, 2 times world champion. I'll brag about
I
that all
mean,
day.
congratulations.
It's a big deal.
It
But
is.
yeah, that self competitiveness, I can really relate to that. And not falling under perfectionism, but excellence,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
I've had to get over perfectionism.
Hmm.
That is something that I've had to really work hard at. When I finally figured out that that was a tendency I had,
Yeah.
um, I had to say, it's funny if you have like self talk, you know what I'm talking
Hmm.
about when I say self talk. You have some people, if you say that's good enough, it's probably not a
It's not good
super
enough, right?
healthy self talk. But for perfectionists, it's actually very freeing.
Yeah.
And so, I've had to learn like, hey, my 80% or 90% may be someone else's 100%.
Hmm.
Or, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm like, I put a lot of effort in here.
Right.
Perfection is just a high bar to
Yeah.
reach. And so I feel like I've grown a lot in that area. I still have space to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's how I started out when I first got into like video editing, because it had to be that
Yeah.
perfectionist and it would take so freaking long. Now it's like I'll edit something and it's like, that's great. Like, they're
Right.
like, people aren't going to pick up on these little things that you would take hours to
Yeah.
dive into. They're not even aware of it,
You
you know?
find out quickly that not everybody has the same eye we do,
Hmm.
in visual arts or whatever. And so you're like, okay, you know what? They're not probably not going to see that, or they're not going to hear. I'm a musician as well, so can hear all
Hmm.
the different parts, of a band or whatever. I can hear mistakes, but if you're not trained to hear that stuff,
Right.
you probably wouldn't know.
Right.
So my husband's a musician, and he's like, "Did you hear when I messed up that one part?" I'm like, "Babe, I barely noticed it. I don't think anybody else is going to notice it." So
Yeah.
I think it's just it's kind of getting over yourself,
Hmm.
and saying, you know what, this is the time worth it,
Right.
worth the perfectionism and the
Right.
kind of that, I don't know, cyclical pattern of being stressed because it's not just perfect
Hmm.
and right. So,
What was that process like for you to get over the whole perfectionist thing?
I mean, I think some of it's just that self talk that I was talking about. Being able to encourage yourself is important.
Hmm.
but
That's the truth.
but also, like, it gives you freedom when you can forgive yourself. You can give yourself a break. Sometimes I'm
Hmm.
really hard on myself. I mean, no one can be harder on me than I am.
Hmm.
And so, again, we talk about the self talk stuff, and I'm beating myself up all the time.
Yeah,
No one has to tell me that I screwed up. I know.
I know.
Yeah. And so, for me, it was just giving grace to myself
Yeah.
and knowing that no one expects me to be perfect. I'm the only judge of that.
Right.
I mean, I want to do my best. I'm not a slacker. I'm always going to try to overachieve, and
Right.
that's just part of who I am, and I have to embrace that as well. But internally, just give myself grace when I mess up. I still am very hard on myself, but I'm so much better than I was.
Yeah.
So it's just practicing it.
Hmm.
Um, Even externally saying those things when I'm upset at myself. I'll tell my husband, "Oh, I did this today, and um, I don't, I should have done this, but I didn't,
Hmm.
and I'm starting to be but I know." And then I start forgiving myself right then and there.
Yeah.
And so he, I don't know if you've ever read well, you may not have read the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm,
There's a whole process and a mindset that, your body hears everything. Your
mm-hmm.
mind, your body, your soul. I mean, it just absorbs everything. And
Yep.
so even the words we speak can be traumatic to our
Yep.
souls and to our bodies.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful how we speak to
Yeah.
ourselves.
Now I was reading, it might have been this morning actually. So I'm looking into like doing the master cleanse diet, which is like
Oh,
it's lemon
yeah.
water, cayenne pepper,
Yeah.
like kind of like getting rid of
Uh-huh.
parasites and stuff. And like
Yep.
the first chapter, he mentions like for the longest time, doctors were saying like our mind, our necks, our bodies were not connected,
Mm-mm.
and they were
Separate entities.
separate,
Right.
and over time they're like, wait a minute, like everything is connected. So like from our actions to our language,
Yep.
what we consume, what we put into our bodies, it's all connected.
We're a whole being.
Yeah.
And I think we know that in our faith. It's
Yeah.
easy to see how it's all connected. But even as we pursue health,
Mm-hmm.
I know you were on the carnivore
Still
diet,
am.
still
it's
am.
it's rough.
I was doing that too. It affected everything.
Mm-hmm.
You changed your habits, your patterns, the way you think.
Yeah.
I mean, it affects you
it's it's been
100%.
like today, I had a really small cheat day yesterday, but I woke up today and I had never felt like less energy than I have in probably 2 weeks. Like it's just straight up depletion. And I woke up and like normally I'm like trying to psych myself out. Like I got Kelly coming over. She's a great conversationalist. Like she's gonna be on fire with points and actions. And then I look at me and I'm like, you are such a pumpkin right now. Like it's not even cool. Like so
Okay, but so here you can have some self grace. I just got off a cruise
yeah.
where I ate dessert
Yeah.
every night. So
All right.
I mean, I'm
That works.
pumpkining with you, dude.
Yeah.
I am not. We just kind of let loose on the
Oh,
cruise.
as you should when you go on
Yeah,
vacation. I know
yeah,
I would. I tell my friends the like I'll drink bourbon. Like I'll enjoy
yeah.
a glass or two of bourbon. And Kyle Brammer actually gifted me that.
Oh, he's a
So
good
he
one for
is,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when I go on vacation, mojitos are my go-to.
Those are
They're
yummy.
so good. And I never had one before, so I tried one
Oh,
for the first
really?
time. Yeah. You can do blueberry,
Yes.
strawberry, blackberry,
All the flavors.
pineapple, and I'm
So good.
like this is dangerous.
Yeah.
I stop at 2
Yes.
sometimes, maybe 3, but throughout the day,
They're super
you gotta
yummy.
sweat it out. But
Mhm.
yeah, those are and I won't drink them except I'm on vacation. It's become like a delicacy of mine.
There you go. Something to look
So like,
forward to.
I know, yeah. So
See?
like, anytime I go somewhere, it's like it's a mojito day.
Yeah. We don't tend to drink sugar at our
Yeah.
house. Like we just don't drink
Okay.
anything with sugar in it. But every once in a while we'll have a glass of wine or something. But the
There's
mixed drinks
specialties,
are specialty things
specialty things.
yeah.
I love that. What got you into doing what you do now at Northgate?
Mhm.
Because it's that whole partnership training, equipping, like that whole leader status. How did you get into that? What did you do before?
Yeah. So backing up just a little bit, I used to live in Columbus, this area,
Okay.
and I was an executive pastor. I had planted a bunch of churches.
Oh, okay.
We planted a bunch. One of them grew to about 800, and they were like, "Okay, you've been with us this whole time," And so I have a worship background. I've done worship, creative arts, associate pastor, children's pastor. I've done a lot. And I'm like, Lord, why am I not continuing on one of these paths? Why do I? It was almost as if he kept like saying, I would start a ministry and then I would move to the next thing. I would kind of hand it off and move to the next thing and hand that off and move to the next thing. And I learned that I'm apostolic. I'm a builder, and I love to grow things. I love to equip the people to do it, and I don't have to own it. I don't have to keep it. So long story short, I became the executive pastor there at that church.
Okay.
About a couple years later, my husband got a transfer. We moved to Georgia.
Oh.
I was on the side helping this organization called Chemistry Staffing. We staff church staff, basically. So I'm interviewing pastors every day. And
Okay.
helping churches find good staff
Okay.
members. So I was doing that on the side. Um, so I actually went down to Georgia, increased my hours with chemistry staffing. I also had my Kelability clients,
Okay.
which are church clients as well. They were church plants that needed help. And
Okay.
so I came alongside them and resourced them and supported them and
Okay.
through that process. Um, so I'm down in Georgia. We're there about 3 years. At this point, I'm working full time with chemistry staffing. I'm the
Mm.
director of strategic initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, if you think about it, the executive pastor of
Yeah.
that organization.
Yeah.
And I'm doing full time ministry. So I come back to Columbus. My husband switches careers,
Okay.
comes back to Columbus. We built a home here, still working for chemistry. And we were like, it's in our DNA to help plant a church.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we go find a church plant again and just do this all over again? And so we had a church in mind, and we happened to build our house right by Northgate Church. So we
Oh.
had to pass Northgate every single time we went anywhere.
Okay.
And my husband, Andy, kept saying, like, I think we need to stop in there. I just kind of felt drawn and called. And
Mm-hmm.
so he visited. Of course, we were trying to be like super incognito,
Right.
like super, but people who we had known at previous churches, because we had gotten around quite a bit,
Yeah.
a lot of different churches.
You saw some
Yeah,
familiar
and they're yelling
faces.
out his name and introducing him to Chris, the
That's so
pastor. Yeah,
funny.
and we were like, no, Same thing happened when I ended up coming, because I stayed down in Georgia while my daughter finished school, so I came a
Okay.
little later. And yeah, same thing when I came. They were like, weren't you the executive pastor at
That's
so
so
and so?
funny.
And I was like, yeah. And so it was hard to hide. But ultimately we kept going back, and we felt like, this is a place of freedom, and there's a long story there, but ultimately we ended up going to Northgate, and I was really okay just being in full-time ministry at
Mm-hmm.
chemistry staffing. Um, and I was doing my business too. And
Right.
there's something about local ministry that's just different,
Yeah.
because chemistry staffing is fully virtual.
Okay.
I do everything from home.
Oh, okay.
So
That's a game changer.
it really
That
is.
personal in-body connection versus
Yeah.
online
Yeah.
connection.
And community,
Yeah.
right? There's something to be said for community. And so I got to know, Chris and Mike, some of the
Mm-hmm.
leaders at the church, and really connected with them well. And I ended up doing a consultation, and just talked to a bunch of the leaders and
Mm-hmm.
gave feedback and
Right.
things like that. And ultimately, it just seemed like it was a good fit.
So
So
so you no longer work for chemistry
I
staff?
do. I
You
still
do.
work full
Is
time for
it
chemistry.
through, or is Northgate like its own thing for you?
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
through Kelability. It's separate. So
Okay.
I work
That's what I
for
was.
the church
Okay.
directly. Um, but yeah, I still work for chemistry. The cool thing is that it's so related. Like what I
Mm-hmm.
learned from one organization, like what I learned from our home church,
Right.
Northgate, I'm applying to chemistry, and what I'm learning from chemistry, I'm able to just apply to
It's just
Northgate.
the
And
back
it
and
just,
forth
so there's this
exchange.
beautiful synergy, this symbiotic
Mm-hmm.
thing that happens. And so it's almost like I'm working one job.
Yeah. I
Um,
guess that makes sense.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I bet that's really nice then.
it's really cool. I'm never bored,
Yeah.
but I love to stay busy.
Mm.
You don't really want to see me bored. I'm not.
You're
I,
not a bored person.
mm-mm. Now I'll read if I'm bored.
Oh, we're well aware of that. 125 books later, and she's not stopping anytime soon. See,
Yes, so I take
it's
that advantage of that.
funny because I say I don't have time to read, and then you're out hearing everything you're doing. Plus 125 books later, it's like, Sam, you're lazy. Like you got to do something.
I don't want anybody to feel that way. I actually was working with a counselor one time, and I was like, is there a problem with me? Like, do I have ADHD or something that is
Uh-huh.
causing me to have to fill up all my space? And she's like, no, that's just how you're wired.
That's so funny.
I was like, why why do I do all this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel the need to prove anything to anybody.
Right.
That's not it.
Well, it's that self
It
drive,
is.
like that self competitiveness, that self nature to.
Yeah, and if I know something and I can help, and I don't know if you know the Enneagram, but I'm a
Yeah.
okay, so I'm a 1 wing 2.
Okay.
And so, I've got that perfectionist, that's
Mhm.
called the executive, I think. And so I'm a 1 wing 2, 2 is a helper.
Mhm.
And a lot of people in ministry have that 2 wing that,
Yeah.
I can fill a lot of gaps.
You're
It's
just
easy for me.
multifunctional.
Yeah, but I love it. I think that what we're learning in the church world right now is that, where you had in the past, you have the youth pastor, then you have the discipleship pastor, and you have the
Mhm.
worship pastor. You know, in that structure, I didn't fit very well because I didn't want to just be one thing. I wanted to be multiple things. And so,
Yeah.
moving forward, I look back and nowadays churches need generalists. They need people who can do a lot of different
Mhm.
things well. And I feel like I fit in that world better than I did in just one single lane.
Do you think that's because the way society is changing and how people are advancing to do multiple things? Like, it makes me think of just like the whole entrepreneurial thing. Like, that's been exploding.
Mhm.
Even probably during COVID is when a lot of people became really explorative and becoming an entrepreneur and realizing all the different positions they can do or have to do in order to make something happen. And that kind of, I feel like, bleeds out into the society of things to go, you can do all these things.
I think
And
it's
it's
a
just like
lot of
a
things.
nature of
I think
habit
that's
kind of.
one aspect of it. I think during the pandemic, fewer people went into Bible school. Some people quit their jobs so they could support their family. So they thought, oh well, Amazon's making. I can make more money at Amazon and
Mm,
get benefits where my church is only giving me 30 grand a year. I can't
I
support
got
my
you.
family, or I have to work a second job in order to
Hmm.
do that. So we lost a lot of people in ministry during the pandemic. And then we also found that um, a lot of people started their own thing,
Hmm.
well, fewer people going to Bible school. So then you don't have the quantity of
Right.
people moving up. And then you've got this entrepreneurial mindset. You've got information at your fingertips.
Yeah.
You can figure out anything.
Hmm.
And so people know a lot more now. They don't just stay in their own lane, and they're able to kind of help a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, being in one single lane is limiting.
Yeah.
If I have the ability to lead worship and the ability to, minister to the kids or whatever,
Yeah.
if I can do multiple things, use those things in me.
Hmm.
Don't let them go dormant.
Yeah.
And I feel like churches sometimes um they don't hire the people, they're just hiring for the position.
Yeah.
And so I think we're shifting
Yeah.
to church is always slower in their progress and eh, um their evolution of things,
Yeah.
but they tend to adopt things very slowly. But we see a subtle shift in that, people kind of being more generalists and being able to be used in their abilities rather than just fitting a hole,
Yeah.
fitting a mold.
Like ability over title.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
what can they bring to the table
Exactly.
to put the max, not like max effort to exhausting it, but like the mass effect
Right.
that they're able to do and be a part of. So that makes
Right.
sense. And I feel like a lot of, I mean, even just regular jobs try to do that with
It
people,
has
you know?
changed. Yeah. And I think, before it was just like, oh, you don't do what we want, fired.
Yeah.
Now you see a lot more development, you see more grace. It almost swung too far. You're
Hmm.
almost like, okay, now you're hanging on to people too
Yeah.
long. But I mean, there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
So I think we just continue to learn and
Yeah.
grow. But if we can develop people, that's the best thing you could do.
Yeah.
And I think, getting to do some of that at Northgate, getting to do some of that at chemistry, that's
Hmm.
fulfilling to me for sure.
Yeah. So in like regards like chemistry staffing, what's the process look like when you guys are searching for people?
Yeah. Churches hire us to find candidates. So we're sourcing them, scouting, looking for them, recruiting. And then we're putting them through 3 interviews,
Hmm.
virtual interviews. And there's a first round, second round, third round. there's a church coach, and I've operated as that as well, but we walk with them through the whole process. I walk with all the candidates, and we would do the third round interview before we would introduce them to the church.
Okay.
So we would be the kind of the liaison between, the chemistry
Candidate
staffing
and
and the church,
okay.
and then we would kind of gatekeep or say, yes, this candidate would be good at this church,
Yeah.
because we've gotten to know the church at that time.
Right.
We've gotten to understand the candidate and how they're wired. So we end up putting them through, we have proprietary assessments that we put them through. We
Okay.
put the church through assessments, and it's almost like a dating app.
That's what it sounds.
Mhm.
Yeah, it sounded like, man, you're getting because the attributes,
It
personalities,
is.
your hobbies.
It's 126, I think, points of data that we pull out of them,
Okay.
and we pull out of the church what they're looking for and who they are and how they believe, like all theology and personality and all of that. And we match them up, and then we don't say, oh, you're not a candidate because you're not 100%. What we do is we say, what are the things that aren't aligning? And then when we interview, we get to ask questions that
As
kind
to
of,
why is it not
what,
aligning?
where, and how is it not aligned? It could be that they answered yes on something and the church answered no, but they're actually, it's kind of like, we don't want to talk politics, but it's kind of like there are some Democrats and some Republicans who actually believe more the same thing than
Yeah.
we really think.
Yeah.
We just chose a side. So it's kind of like that.
Okay.
They're, like belief in women in ministry. Some churches are completely against it, and some churches are fully for it. But there's this whole scale in between.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, where do you fall on the scale?
Yep.
And so we're able to see, okay, the church believes this, you believe this. Where are you both really?
Okay.
And so it just brings clarity on things.
Well, that is a very professional definition that you are a professional church dater of positions. There's no other way to describe it.
I mean,
you let churches date future positions
exactly.
of leaders that are going to be working for them. Right. So, hey,
yeah,
whatever works.
And we coach them through the process. What I love about chemistry and what I've learned from chemistry that I've applied to other positions is that we're always leaving people better than we found them. If we can love, this is a ministry first organization. So how we love on people through the process. So this is an incredibly sensitive, tender transition time,
right,
for both the candidate and the church.
Yeah, 100%.
And this is like a marriage, because when you bring your family into a church, the whole family has to be there, and,
right.
and it affects everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's really a critical time in their lives. And it's hard.
What's the sensitivity process with that? Because I feel like in some situations you would be asking a candidate tough questions, or you would be asking the church tough questions, because this isn't going to be like a 2-month ordeal. This is for years to set this up, connect the right people with the right church or right nonprofit. And do you only do churches? Or do you do other nonprofits?
We do some nonprofits, but mostly churches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so the extreme side of that is you kind of want to be 100% sure.
Yeah, and you can't be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, not everybody. So if you have people who are performers, those are the harder people to kind of break down the wall, because they know what to say and how to act in any specific time. And so the cool thing about using a search firm is that they tend to be real quicker with us than they would with the church.
Yeah.
So we can see things and decipher things that maybe they wouldn't reveal to the church. We'll be like, hey, man, just be real with us.
Okay.
We ask immediately, first round interview, hey, are there any skeletons in your closet that the church might need to know about?
Yeah.
Immediately, right out of the gate. And they're like, wow. Sometimes they're revealing some really deep stuff that they've been through, but we get it all on the table.
Yeah.
So we know, but we tend to pray with them. We minister to them. We take off our interview hat, put our coaching hat on at the end, and say, hey, can I speak into something and either encourage you or help set you up for success in another way? And so that I have a coaching certification that, I'm able to use some of that coaching in those moments.
Okay.
And it's really helpful. It also really reveals to us whether the candidate's teachable.
Which is a big thing.
It's huge.
A big thing.
We use AI a lot in our interview process and everything. So, we'll submit notes, and we have AI put things in, like organize our notes for us and
Okay.
stuff like that. And we have to rate them on EQ and
Okay.
all kinds of stuff. And AI can pull out a bunch of things that, like questions that we can follow up with in the next
Mm,
interview.
yeah.
And it helps prompt us to really dive in deeply to some things that maybe we missed as humans.
Yeah.
But we use our gut response, our discernment.
Emotional
Yes,
intelligence,
we
bodily
that
intelligence,
AI can't
like,
do.
yeah.
So we partner with AI to do some of that
Okay.
stuff.
That's super fascinating. That's really fascinating. What's a situation where something wouldn't work out? Where maybe you're on the third phase and the candidate for some reason like you just knew this actually is probably not going to be a good fit. Or do you knock that out in the first and second?
We try. I mean, you always try.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we're trying to eliminate them. Um, I feel like there's a plethora of reasons why a candidate wouldn't get through.
Mhm.
I think, theology fit is one thing. As they go on through the interview process, that third round, they're the most relaxed because they've already done it twice.
Yeah.
And so they tend to really show the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And so they reveal their true colors pretty well during that process. I think the third round is when they get scared. Maybe their wife won't be happy or their
Mm.
husband won't be happy in that state, or with that type of church, or they all of a sudden second guess and they, no, you know what, I would rather be by family. Or so on the candidate side, there's a bunch of doubts that happen during that
Yeah.
third round. On our side of the shop, we're always looking at confidence, EQ, fit. But because that church coach knows the church well, that some of the church team
Mhm.
and what they're looking for, they can see specifically through that lens. So if they first and second rounders don't see that.
Yeah.
So they're able to see through a unique lens to see whether they would actually place them at that church.
Okay.
So that, I mean, so they have, we have a filter of, I don't know, I would say 10 different things that we would look at that would
Okay.
disqualify a candidate. But
Okay.
we also give them, if they want feedback at the end, we give them feedback. We try
Mhm.
to pivot them too. We're doing
Well, and that
currently
can help
about,
them set up for success too,
it
right?
does,
Because
totally.
it's not so much draining all the knowledge and information out of them, but then
Right.
if they want
It's a
feedback,
teachable
here you
moment.
go.
Yeah, and two, we're really big on pivots. So maybe they won't work out for this one church, but they
Hmm.
score well for another church.
Okay.
We might pivot them and re-interview them for another church, so that it's not dead in the water.
Hmm.
Where if they're searching on their own and they don't use a staffing agency, they're having an issue because once that door closes, they restart everything all over again.
Yeah.
We already have the information on them. So if we have a church in our process that works well, we can continue to, pivot them to try different churches.
Okay. Would they do people have to go through the candidacy interviewing process again when you pivot them to a different church?
It depends on how far they got. Yeah.
Okay.
So they wouldn't repeat like a first round interview if they just did it,
Okay.
within a period of 6 months.
Okay.
So within 6 months, if they have already gone through all three interviews, we would repeat the third round,
Okay.
just so that new church coach can see who they are and
Okay.
how they're wired.
Okay. So in your coaching, and I mean, you have 20 years coaching.
Personally,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
okay. So when you coach, being on a church side and then also the professional business side, but then there's also a side of like just professionalism and everything
Hmm.
you've experienced with coaching. How do you navigate that in your day-to-day lives when you're doing life with people?
Well,
Do you ever get people, hey, and the questions they're asking you, you're like, well, I'm a coach, this is what I do you limit yourself to what you say, or do you kind of like push towards like, hey, join the
I gotcha.
you know
Yeah, so I originally got my coaching certificate so that I could integrate it with what I already do.
okay.
That was my original intent. So I basically, I want to be able to ask good questions. I
Hmm.
want to be able to help people find the answer within themselves. So um, I integrate that in everything I do, even parenting.
Hmm.
even parenting.
Yeah.
Sometimes my kids will catch me and they'll be like,
Ma,
"Are
you're
you coaching
coaching.
me?" My husband will be like, "Are you coaching?" So they call me out on it. But there are times when um, people do they pull on me
Hmm.
a little bit more. I'm okay with that. I mean, especially if it's ministry related,
Yeah.
I'm very generous with my time that
Yeah.
way. But if it comes to a point where they're pulling on me too much, I'll say, "Hey, why don't we set up a time when we can
Okay.
talk?" Um, I do. I don't do as much individual coaching as I used to, like one-on-one. I do more consulting. If I do individual coaching, it's more like coach mentoring.
Okay.
So it's kind of a combination where I'm coach consulting, coach mentoring. Um, I was helping a friend with her nonprofit, and I enjoyed it so much, just jumping into her world
Right.
and helping her grow her business and even like manage some team dynamics and things. I love that stuff. Like,
Hmm.
telling me about a person, and I was like, oh, is this how they respond, or do they react like this? Well, they need a person that says this, and you need to hold your ground here, and like
Mm.
just being
Okay.
able to give insight. Like, personalities are fascinating to me.
You ain't lying.
Why?
No, I love
Oh
personalities
yeah,
because
they're
because
so
there's
cool.
so many different people.
And how they respond to one another. And I mean, I'm not always great at it myself, but
Yeah.
I can see it from afar. And
Right.
it's always easier to see other people's issues than your own. I admit,
Preach.
yeah, but it's so cool to understand that, hey, this person's responding out of fear,
Hmm.
not out of anger.
Yeah.
Or they're shutting down because of XYZ, not because of this. And so, like, how do you manage them? How do you love on them well? How do you pull them out of that? How do you help put a mirror up and them see themselves in that mirror
In a
in
gentle
a
way and
gentle
not
way?
in
Right.
a
Right.
no.
Exactly. So that fascinates me. I think if I were to go back, um, in time, and I would probably do coaching and consulting for organizations and team dynamics.
Okay.
I just love the
Yeah,
team
yeah,
dynamic
that
thing.
makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
You're more of a team coach.
Yeah.
So when you first started, did you do more personal things, or was it like
hmm
okay? So you
I did individual
eventually
coaching, and then
transitioned.
and then I would do some group coaching. But the group coaching is what stood out to me most. Um, but some of the people that I'm coaching are dealing with team dynamics. And
Okay.
so I'm able to like speak into that and try to help them crack the nut.
Do you feel like because coaching is your thing on that competitive nature of yourself, do you think that challenges you more to get more done with a group of people versus one person?
Hmm. I think it just depends on their goals.
Yeah.
I I mean, if their goals are just to get along,
Mm,
we're not getting a lot done, but when you see the little wins, it's amazing.
yeah.
They see the progress in their relational equity. Like, that's amazing. Um, when we're coaching toward a goal, it's a project management type thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I project manage something, and I'm equipping and empowering people to do all of those things,
Yeah.
but I'm doing some coaching. My favorite thing is, someone says, "Should I do this or this?" My favorite thing is to say, "What do you think?
Mhm.
What do you think we should do?"
Yeah.
Well, then let's try that.
Well, and that's putting them in a position of power and authority, kind of like what you said at the beginning of
It,
this podcast. Like
I
your
don't need
goal
to.
is to like let go of the cart
Right.
eventually and not be the one steering it the
I
entire
am
time.
definitely I love team dynamics. I'm not a fan of um, the one person does everything type
Hmm.
of model. If we can link arms with each other and move toward a goal together, I'm in my best place.
Hmm.
And so I see when I try to replicate that in others, um, and see them get it,
Hmm.
that is so
Like the
satisfying to
light
me.
bulb.
It's
Like
beautiful. It's so neat to see them then ask those good questions, and
yeah.
them understand that it's safe. to come to me. Like I have a strong personality.
Mm,
I do, and I know it. You know, people can get intimidated, but I have such a tender heart. They
yeah.
once they get to know me, they can say anything to me.
Well, they begin to know how
And
you operate too,
yeah,
which helps all the communication
yeah.
pieces.
I'm a thinker. I will continue to think, and sometimes it shows it on my face that I'm just there processing
Yep.
something, you know?
We call those RBFs,
RBFs.
you
And
know.
I'm like, nope, you know, get
Yeah.
those up. But you know, sometimes I'm just processing, and being a strong woman in ministry specifically
Yeah.
is a unique calling.
Yeah.
And so I talk to many women in ministry who just don't feel like they're taken seriously.
Hmm.
Um, they're shut down. They're not mentored because, how can a man mentor a woman
Hmm.
it's really tough. So I find, I thought, Lord, how can I utilize the position that you've given me, and that you've opened the door for, so that I can empower people to
Hmm.
do the work of the ministry. Even when I was young, I wanted to equip and empower people to do the work of the ministry in whatever capacity that is. It doesn't mean I have to always do the ministry.
Hmm.
It just means I'm helping empower and light the fire under their
Yeah.
butts, right? And but that has to happen through team, through
Hmm.
collaboration, through all of these elements that I feel like a lot of pastors tend to work in silos, or it's my way or the highway, or they just want it to they don't want to talk about it, they just want you to do it.
Yeah.
And
Which I think can sometimes create more of a
it does,
tornado
yeah, it can.
because
And
you're stopping communication, you're
right.
not sharing vision, culture, goals.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I love it when I see those, like I said, light bulb moments, when you see the teams finally start to collaborate and
Hmm.
work together, and you see the communication and improve.
Yeah.
Um, of course, I'm a systems girl too, so I love to create systems and help
Okay.
things improve. So if I see a gap somewhere, I'm going to say, okay, we need a process for that, or we
Okay.
need a process for that. But I don't always have to be the one doing it.
Hmm.
Um, like I can create a solution, and then I think, who's the best person to do that?
Yeah.
So at chemistry staffing, we had we have there's a rock star girl who ended up she was working part-time for us, doing so much. She was just doing so much. She ended up getting a full-time job locally
Hmm.
that gave her benefits that she needed. And so we lost her. She basically was there since the start of the company and had her hands in everything.
Okay.
So it's when you're building, if you don't continually restructure and reposition and reprocess things, you're going to get stuck in
Yeah.
this space. So when she left, it was really hard. I mean, I have to admit, I teared up because she was
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but it gave us the opportunity to re-look at everything and shuffle things. Okay, this probably belongs in this bucket, and this belongs in this bucket, and this
Yeah.
belongs here. And you know what? We're functioning as a well-oiled machine, and we've grown and we've maintained the same amount of people
That's cool.
because we did that. So we're more efficient,
Yeah.
and AI has helped too.
Yeah. Gotta love that AI. I use it for grammar corrections.
Yeah.
I failed in English
Oh,
pretty
did
much my
you?
whole life. Yeah, I hate grammar
I like
correction.
the Grammarly, like the little emails you get from Grammarly, and they're like, "Awesome job!
Yeah,
You're
I'm
98% this," or
yeah.
yeah,
I've
I
I've
love
never
those.
been good with grammar. Just not my thing. When you're dealing with groups of people,
Hmm.
I want to circle back to personalities.
Okay.
Because you say you have a group of 5 people, right? And you're navigating all different personalities. How do you develop or communicate a goal to them? Because they're all going to process differently. They're all going to have different inputs and ideas. How do you bring that team together collaboratively to get on that same goal?
That's a good question. And I think it depends on the the type of team you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if it's a church team, whiteboarding is awesome because
Okay.
people are collaborating together.
Yeah.
I think anytime you can get people talking in a group, you always have one or two people who shut down in a group
Mm.
setting, and so it's helping them find their voice in that moment,
Yeah.
helping the we call them EGPs, right? The extra grace person.
Yeah.
We
Okay. Yeah.
always
Yeah.
have those people who, talk and take over all the conversation. So first of all, it's managing that piece, making sure that everybody equally has a voice.
Okay.
Um, but also it's what do you do before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting?
Yeah.
I think those are important. Do you have an agenda so that you can stay on track during the
Mm-hmm.
meeting, which makes everybody, honestly, people think, oh, that's so stuffy, but it actually is freeing because then you're not trying to think of things on the spot and you're not,
It's being efficient
it's
for
just,
that
you can be
purpose.
efficient. And then if there's anything outside of that, at the end, you can say, hey, is there anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah.
Then you're not under pressure trying to get like, oh, should I have something to say? And what do
Yeah.
I, so you know what the agenda is. You can create clarity in a safe environment. During the meeting, it's making sure someone is collecting that data somehow and making sure it's written down
Yeah.
so that, and whether it's whiteboarding and taking a picture of it or writing notes or whatever, making sure you're capturing exactly what's happening in the meeting.
Mm.
Even using AI, you could have it transcribe your
Transcribe
meeting.
and
Yeah, the
yeah.
otter,
Yep.
whatever. So you can do all that stuff, and then have it do some high level notes for you,
Yeah.
and then afterwards, making sure that everybody's on the same page. At the end of the meeting, you're making sure everybody knows their action steps. Okay, so as a review, you're going to go ahead and do this, finish this project. You're going to reach out to this person. You're going to da 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 da,
Mm-hmm.
and then they get a follow up at the end of that after the meeting,
Yeah.
and make sure that we're communicating in their language. Meaning, if they're a high D person, they're a driver, they're not going to want to read humongous paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want the bullet points. If they're, and I use the disc for this kind of communication stuff. So the D would be the driver,
Yep.
and they would need high level stuff. And usually you give them one or two things per email. You don't give them a bunch of stuff in one
Yeah.
email. If they're an I, you want to talk to them and then follow it up with a list.
Yeah. That's
That would
funny.
be someone who gets distracted by people.
Yeah.
People first. If they're a C and they get lost in the detail, then you're trying to help them not go down the rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And you're keeping it high enough level, but you're still giving them enough information to satiate that
Mm-hmm.
need for detail.
Yeah.
And then the S's are kind of, they're pretty easy. I mean, the S's are pretty, you don't want to overwhelm them.
Yeah.
You give them enough detail, but they want clarity.
Yeah.
Give them cleared and don't change things on them very quickly. So understanding their personality and helping each other understand each other's personality and how we operate
Mm-hmm.
really helps. I'm trying to think of the book I read, Power. Oh man, I can't remember the title, but it was fascinating how they talked through like team dynamics and didn't know, oh, this person, not only were they dealing with that personality, but they were leading from a place of fear because of past experiences. And so it's not just about personality.
Yeah. You're dealing with all different walks and experiences and
histories and traumas.
Yeah.
And I mean, even like, not just church trauma, but like work traumas and personal traumas and
boss traumas.
Could be. Or even like relational things, like if they're not getting encouraged at home a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big encourager, so I'm always like I'm always cheering people from the rooftops. So if someone comes up to me, even if I had a hand in it, and says that was amazing, I'll say that person, didn't they do great? And I don't take credit for it. I'm just like, they did awesome, because I want them to feel valued. I want them to feel celebrated because I'm words of affirmation.
Okay.
I know I need encouraged. I do that for others.
Yeah.
And so that is, I think, just understanding so many of layers of someone. Number one, helps them feel like you're trying, you value them enough to try to I'm modifying my behavior so that they can understand me better.
Yeah.
And I do that for each person I come into contact with.
Yeah. Well, I think some people would view that. I personally don't. I 100% agree with you, just for the record. But I also feel like some people would look at that, depending on where they've come from or where they've experienced. They would view what you just said as a manipulative character.
Oh, yeah, I could see what you're saying. So, one of the reasons my husband liked me growing up is because I am who I am no matter where I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not modifying my behavior or my personality.
Right.
I'm modifying how I can, like the way out of honor,
Mm-hmm.
how I'm communicating with someone
Right.
because I understand who they are.
Right.
So, for instance, um, one kid I could, for growing up, my kids growing up, one of them I could say, "Hey, can you go grab that over there?"
Mm-hmm.
And they would just go and grab that. The other kid needed to know why they were grabbing that.
Yeah.
And so I would say, "Hey, your dad needs those shoes. Can you grab those and hand them?" So it's just understanding who they are
Yeah.
and modifying how you communicate. Not, and I don't modify. I am who I am,
Right.
and I know you're that way too. Like if an organization wants you to change who you are,
That's a
run.
problem.
Run.
That's a red flag.
Red flag. So that, yeah, I understand how maybe that was communicated a
It
little
just made
differently.
me you
Absolutely.
communicated great, but I was just like, oh, there's actually something there that people will view that.
That's true. I'm glad
Because
you
because
clarified.
I'm not the best at getting on people's levels sometimes. If I'm like super busy, if I got a lot going on up
Yeah.
here and somebody asks me something, I can be very direct.
Yes.
And for me, being direct with people is a really easy thing for me because it's
Right.
clarity. It's straight to the point. There's no beating around the bush. And we had this
Yeah.
conversation when I shot you an example of something, but that was so soothing to me. Cause like,
But you know why I did that?
cause you know how I
I
operate.
know that
Like,
you're a direct person, and that's the kind of communication you needed.
yeah,
If you were someone else, I would have flowered it up a little bit.
yeah,
So it wasn't for me. I
right.
didn't change who I was, but I was
Just
able
understanding the
to
person on the
understand
other end.
you.
Yeah,
And I knew you would appreciate bullet points and
yeah.
let's get down to business. But I do think that it's yes, you need to be fully yourself, but I'm always trying to grow and modify how I can orient myself to Jesus and be more Christ-like
Mm,
in my personality. I can't change who I am,
right.
but how I express myself, I can 100%
Manage that.
manage that.
And yeah,
And even like pausing before I can respond really fast to
I'm
things.
learning to do
Yeah.
that.
And
I'm
so
learning
even
to,
just taking a pause, like so I'm practicing the pause.
yeah,
I'm practicing not having to solve everybody's problems all the time.
yeah.
Helping them figure it out or letting them figure it out. My daughter, she just got her first apartment,
Okay.
my youngest. So we're almost empty nesters. She's not fully moved out yet.
Okay.
But it was cute. She got an apartment here in Delaware. And it's way up, like 2 stories, and not just 2 stories, but that's like 2 stories for the one set of steps and
And
two
then two
stories
more
for
stories.
and she has a dog. And I was like, "It's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem." And so she kept saying, "Mom, it's not your problem to
Yeah.
manage. Like, I have to figure this out." And I'm like, "You're absolutely right." And so I kept practicing through the process of moving and huffing and puffing up the stairs, trying to get her
Yeah.
stuff upstairs. Um, I expressed my concern and then I had to let it
I'm gonna
go.
start asking myself that
Yeah.
question. Is this my problem?
I
Because
have
if
to
it's not, hands off.
I literally have to imagine myself brushing it off, like
Okay.
not what is it? Not my circus, not my rodeo, or not my circus, not my monkey, or whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. Yeah.
That I mean, that's you have to almost say that to yourself when you're a high responsibility
So do you
person.
typically ask yourself that question if it's not gonna personally affect you, or there could be like a small chance that it would affect you? Is it just like depending on what the situation is and
It
how serious
is.
it is?
I
And
yeah, how serious it is.
yeah,
If it's a serious situation, I'm more likely to interject.
yeah,
If it's something where it's a learning opportunity for someone,
Mhm.
I may let it ride out.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have in the past. I
Yeah.
do now. And I think just part of that comes with wisdom and growing. And am I perfect at it? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know,
Nobody's perfect,
uh,
Well, yeah, I've been saying that a lot lately.
yeah.
I need to ask, is this my problem?
Is this my responsibility? And you have to
Yeah.
like literally like imagine yourself just wiping it off your shoulders because it may not be your problem
Yeah.
to manage. And I have to walk away from a lot of things that I can solve,
Yeah.
but I
But
don't.
it's not your
It's not my
problem. It's not.
problem.
Yeah.
Or I've not been asked
Yeah.
yet. And so, I am a fixer. So typically in a relationship, the man is the fixer and the
Mm,
woman is the nurturer or whatever. And my husband and I are both fixers.
okay.
So we both have to like preemptively, I want you to just listen
Uh-huh.
and hear me and just feel sorry for me right
Yeah.
now. I don't need you to fix me. And he has to do the same thing because I'm just as much of a fixer.
Okay. Okay. I'd say so I'm glad you said that because it makes me think I'm definitely a fixer. If I
Yeah.
see a problem, if I see even something that it could be like in the whole visual arts field,
Yeah.
right? Like I am so quick to notice
I
something.
am too.
And probably last year I started going, it's not my problem.
Yep.
Like it's not my problem. And I have to like because it's not coming up from a place of perfectionism, but excellence. Like, and
Yes.
that's how I internally feel.
Yes.
If you're gonna do something, do it with excellence
Well,
and
and
check and recheck. And
I even
so
have
yeah.
to shut my mouth like you go to a performance or something. I like going to musicals because I have
Okay.
a music background. And I'll my husband will come with me, not super happy about it, but he's so gracious. But he'll come with me and I'll see how they're checking people in. And I'm like, they're using pen and paper. And like I start to get this judgy
Yeah.
thing going on in my head. And I'm thinking, Kelly, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because there's oftentimes I'm like, yay, I'm not in charge. Like
Yeah.
I went on that cruise.
Yeah.
I told everybody, I'm not bringing my phone I'm leaving it in the
Yeah.
cabin. I'm not planning anything. I'm just showing up.
Mm-hmm.
I barely could tell you what ports I was going to, because I was just so like, I am not in charge.
Yeah.
And so I was leaning into that place of being not in charge. And so I think there's a flip you can, a switch you can flip in your head that can tell you, is that right?
A
It flip,
switch.
switch you
A
can
switch.
flip.
Actually, you can say those vice versa. Okay, yeah, because I had to process that for a minute.
Wait a minute.
A flip you switch, a switch you flip. How does
I don't know.
They go both ways.
Okay, we'll take it. But like I think that happens, and you have to say, which way is this going?
Yeah.
Is this something I need to engage with? Is this not? And so, like can I just show up and enjoy something?
Yeah.
Without having to analyze it, without
Yeah.
having to make it better.
That's a good word, analyze.
And make it better. You
sometimes-
always want to make things. I always want to leave things better than I found them.
Mhm.
But when it's not your responsibility, it's grueling. I mean,
Yeah.
you're torturing yourself.
Yeah.
So let it go.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Yeah. And I even on the obscene end of that, even when I don't ask for help or if somebody notices something like, hey, you misspelled this and you misspelled now, I'm gonna share a story. It's a quick one, but it just shows you how bad I suck at grammar and spelling. Like I'm just not good at it. For years, like in weddings, it's vows, VOWS. For years, I would put VOWELS.
Oh,
Nobody
fun.
nobody ever corrected me on it. And
Good times.
it never made sense to me to look up the correct spelling or grammar because I was like, oh no, this is how you spell it. And so like on my flyers, on my PDF packets I send to couples, none of them ever picked it up. Or maybe they did and they didn't say anything about it. But it was one day I was doing a wedding show and I took a picture. And it was on one of my like handout cards. Sarah Plotner texted me.
I love Sarah.
And she was like, hey.
That's how she starts everything.
Just in case you didn't know, vowels are spelled VOWS.
Oh, Sarah.
And I was like,
I love her.
oh my God. she's right. And then it clicked. I was like, they are spelled that way. So just little
You
things like,
become blind to things, but you know
and
what?
that's the thing. I was completely
She
blind. Like,
because you were open and teachable and she was able to speak into that, she made you better.
yeah, 100%.
And so I think that we can't, if we put up a wall and we put this guard up that we don't want feedback,
Right.
we're in bad shape.
Yeah.
Always be open to feedback. Always be open to. Now, do we have to take it 100% of the time? No.
Yeah.
But like you knew her intention behind that was to help you.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
obviously, so in relation to saying that, I'm always open, or at least I feel like I am, even in things that I would just miss, because I think me being the type of person I am, I can get so caught up in the moment of making sure everything will look perfect, from quality graphics to design and detail. It's like I'll miss the little things that I just don't have a high radar on, which in that case it was grammar and spelling. And so,
but do you find that, and I know you're supposed to be asking the questions, but do you find that you, as a strong personality, because I am the same way, that people don't give feedback as easily because they don't know how we'll respond?
Oh, 100%. I would say that's 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't
And
think
I'm super
people,
like wanting it.
yeah,
I'm like, give
same.
me feedback. Give me feedback. Tell me I'm
wanna
on
be,
track.
I
I mean,
wanna
just
be
tell me.
the best person I can every day. And it's hard. And sometimes it's hard to be the best version that I can be because I haven't gotten any feedback from anything in weeks.
Right.
So it's like now I have to be intentional to someone to give me feedback, just that I'm aware of, like, okay, I'm doing pretty good. All right. And I think social media has ruined a lot of that.
Oh, for sure.
That's,
Yeah.
People are so prone to views and likes and follows. It's like, honestly, I could give a rip about that.
Right.
Give me feedback on the product I created that you enjoyed watching, that we're a part of. And you and Sarah both have done that really well. So I'm not saying you haven't, but I had a DJ on last week, Jamar, and we were talking about that shared experience, like when you create something and you get that verbal feedback from like a couple or from someone in their family just saying how amazing you were and how professional and everything tied together. It's like, give me the words. I want the words.
That is so fascinating because oftentimes when I hear something good about me, it's like secondhand.
What do you mean?
So I have two bosses at chemistry. So they're the co-founders, and then it's me. And then, or I hear my bosses tell someone else who then tells me that I'm awesome. So I'll hop on. We'll be hiring someone for chemistry or something, and I'll hop on there, and they'll be like, "We hear you're the glue. You're the glue that holds everything together, and that you're like awesome, and you could do anything." And I'm like, "Oh, that's what they think of me,
right?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's why I try really hard to go right to the person and tell them, or do it in front of them.
Yeah.
Like make sure that they hear when I compliment.
Yeah.
Because I always get it secondhand, or I don't know how I'm doing sometimes.
Right.
And even if I ask, people aren't telling me. Is this driving you crazy? Or do I keep going this direction? Or do you want me to shift?
Yeah.
Because, you think of a ship and you can turn it one knot and you could go off. Yeah. So you could go off far. And so tell me when I'm, knock me upside the head or something when I'm getting off track.
Yeah.
Tell me, because I do not want to get down the road finding out I'm totally off.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's hard too for people to acknowledge other people too, if they're so, I want to say this with delicacy, just for the sake of saying it with delicacy, but I feel like some people won't give a compliment to even like the little things that someone achieves in, because they're aware of the massive Titanic iceberg that they've been hitting for weeks on end.
Could be.
And it's like, and I'm at fault. I've done it once or twice. And but I think it's overcoming that to go, this isn't who this person is right now. Like,
Yeah.
see what they're doing, compliment them. Because I think getting compliments from people is probably the most rewarding serotonin booster you can get. Like, it just instantly, like, somebody approaches you like, hey, you're doing an amazing job and I really appreciate
Yeah.
everything that you're doing. I see the weight you're pulling. I see the flags you're setting up and the ships you're sailing. Like, it's phenomenal work, you
I
know?
love it. And I even to the point where I about teared up because we were on the cruise ship. We
Mm,
had the same waiter every night, like the whole family got together and
okay.
we had the same waiter and his name is Ridwan and he was just awesome. Like,
Ridwa.
yeah,
That's a cool name.
Ridwan,
Oh,
Ridwan.
Ridwan.
He actually he said his name tag on the table said FNU and I was like, is that how do you pronounce that? And he goes, "Oh no, I just have one name, but they put that there." And I said, "Well, what does it mean?" He goes, "First name unknown." Because he only has one name. So
Oh my gosh.
he had one name, Ridwan.
Okay.
But anyway, he's on this cruise ship away from his family. He becomes our family, right?
Yeah.
We're teasing with him, we're joking with him. And the last night, I look up and I see another family. The man gets up, goes to him, I'm gonna tear up, but like just pulls him in, shakes his hand, gives him, the Pentecostal handshake,
The real
I'm gonna give you
firm.
some money.
Yeah.
Puts the money in his hand and he speaks life into Ridwan.
Mm-hmm.
He just said, "This is what I loved about how you served us. I just appreciate you sacrificing
Yeah.
your time with your family to be here, be a part of this, and the attitude in which you did it." I was just like, if we could treat everybody that way
Yeah.
with that much honor and respect, he's the most forgettable he could be
Yeah.
the most forgettable person on that cruise because he's serving food.
Mm-hmm.
But he did it with all his might. Had a smile on his face. He would do a little song each time you put your plate
Okay.
down. He was just a special guy. And I'll never forget him.
Yeah.
Bec- did he change my life? No, but like he did it with all his might. And when I saw that guy approach him and just love on him and
Yeah.
appreciate him, I was like, why can't we all do that?
Yeah.
Why aren't we all doing that regularly?
Yeah. I think it was I quoted this on another podcast, but I actually think it was Joe Rogan who was talking about how we're created to have two sides and you have to pick a side, and you either hate one side and love one side, or you
Okay.
hate one side and you love the other side. Like, that's how we're wired. Like, when you get into like politics or life or
Yeah.
hobbies, like, there's always, it's that internal
It feels safe when
thing.
you have the definitive
Yeah,
thing.
it feels like it validates your emotions, if you will. If you know, if there's almost like a vengeance from someone else that you
Huh.
don't believe in their beliefs, you don't believe in what they're doing. But if we approach them with honor, we approach them with that first rule of kind of like scripture, like first love,
Yeah.
it kind of lets go of that misjudgment, whatever
Yeah.
towards someone.
And because I have the tendency, and because I try not to have a critical heart. I have a critical eye.
Yeah.
And if I let it get to my heart, I can easily go to the one side or the other. But
Mm-hmm.
what I love, and my husband's this way as well, we're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Like we're not one way or the other.
Right.
Like even um in our theology and our political
Yeah.
views, we're not like extremists in
Mm-hmm.
any of those things. And it's not because we're lukewarm, it's not because we don't care,
Right.
but we want unity over division.
Yeah.
And I think, if you can appreciate and love people enough, that gap gets smaller and smaller and
Yeah.
smaller.
We have to realize they're human.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the first
Yeah.
things that, like, this person's a human.
And what is
They're
driving that opinion? What is
Yeah.
driving, just like the personality thing we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
right? All the different personalities and the layers of
Mm-hmm.
experiences that they've had and traumas that they've had, all of that plays into their views and their
Oh yeah.
opinions as well. And
100%.
so if you can take that same, you know, um, concept and put it to what you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and help people become a little more connected to one
Yeah.
another. I, the hardest people to connect with other people who are shut down and are operating in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I have compassion for it, but it's hard when they stay in that space
Yeah.
because nothing the more you push, the more fear
It's like opposite
it
magnets,
does.
like you're
Like,
trying to get closer, but they're getting farther and farther.
yeah.
And
And they don't push back. And so one of, the people who have extreme fear in their lives, even if they're in a place of authority, if they're in a place of, they look confident,
mm-hmm.
whatever, those are the people who my heart really hurts for.
Yeah.
Because until that fear is dropped or healed,
Yeah.
they have a hard time connecting.
Yeah.
They have a hard time bridging that gap. They're going to continually
That magnet,
repel.
yeah.
Right? They're going to continually repel people, and they don't even mean it.
Right.
And they may not even know it.
Yeah.
That's a fear response,
Yeah.
and so it really breaks my heart when people are stuck in that cycle of fear.
How do you so in regards to the fear, like that's kind
Yeah.
of like where that pushback comes
Yeah.
back, right?
Right.
How do you navigate that, like say in coaching a staff of people? What's a healthy pushback that you've experienced versus a negative one?
Yeah. I mean, I think in all regards, first of all, there needs to be safety to push back on leadership,
Mm, that's
right?
fair. Yeah.
I think that it shouldn't be top down. I'm a servant leader.
Mm,
I always want to make people better, and I want to be the lowest and try to get people up,
mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of like keeping the ball in the air,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to be that person keeping the ball in the air, and the people, they may get more visibility and they may have more fun, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to keep things up. So number one is creating a safe space to make sure that feedback is not only um, a safe thing to do, to give
Mm-hmm.
the leaders, but for them to know our hearts well enough to know that when we give feedback, that it's not a personal attack or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. And so really it's about trust.
Yeah.
It's about connection and trust and unity and collaboration. All of those things allow a safe environment for feedback.
Yeah.
So when you have those people who have fear in that environment, the trust counteracts that a little bit. It helps them understand that they're safe. I remember there was a girl who she was volunteering in a specific position, and I had gone to her and I said, "Hey, if it works out, try to do XYZ."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very high level, nothing big, nothing major, and I walk away. And at the end of the service, she didn't do, or she did it, but it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And she came to me and she goes, "Okay, I did what you asked me to do, but it was bad." And I said, "You have every ability to speak. If I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
You're more important than the thing."
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the ability to push back and tell me or make another decision if what I said doesn't align with the present moment. It's
Yeah.
fine. And so it took 3 and 4 weeks to get us to a point where she really believed me.
Okay.
I saw confidence grow in her. I saw her begin to make some really cool decisions,
Mm.
things that maybe I wouldn't have done,
Right.
that she was able to do. And she came up to me one day and she says, "I've never had someone tell me that I could just do it without being told,"
Okay.
And so it was like it unlocked something. There
Yeah.
was a fear there from previous bosses or previous whatever.
Yeah.
There was a fear there that was rooted. And so I could have said the same thing to someone else and they wouldn't have taken it that way.
Right.
They would have made the judgment call.
Right.
But she felt, just because I said something, I mentioned something, it became absolute because
Yeah.
she was too fearful to stand her ground. And so giving her permission to
Mm.
to make good decisions and to just communicate and let us know whatever freed her up so much. She was practically in tears and just thanked us
Yeah.
for loving on her well and giving her that authority.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes as leaders, we actually instill fear in people
Mm-hmm.
unknowingly because we're not communicating and we're not empowering them
Mm-hmm.
to run in their lane.
Yeah.
We're still trying to control everything and keep everything here. So we're only giving them a little bit here and a little bit there. And then there's all kinds of questions that are happening in their
Right.
minds. They're confused. They don't have all the, but if you just dump and give them all the information and say, here's your expectation, and I trust you, run with it. If you
Yeah.
mess up, I've got your back.
Yeah.
That takes away fear in a room like
Yeah.
you'd never believe.
Well,
Having someone's back.
yeah. Well, I think fear too. I mean, and looking at it as a whole, or 30,000 feet above, fear is an identity issue.
It is.
Like at
It
the end of the
is.
day, anything related outside of your identity that causes miscommunication, poor distraction, or not being able to feel fully energized or having the ability to go out and do something, make a choice on your own, that's all identity based.
Yeah, but there are high level leaders that are operating out of fear and don't even realize it.
Would you label that as a piece of lacking in identity and knowing who
I
they
think
are?
that
Because fear comes
it
from
is.
somewhere.
It is. It is. It is part of identity, but I think they shield it with things like the
I think
authority
that's
and
fair.
know,
Yeah.
and it's harder when it's top level leadership because you
Yeah.
can't really speak into that. If they're a fear based leader, they will not let you speak into.
Mm-hmm.
They keep you at arm's length.
Yeah.
So it is harder. But if we as leaders can create an environment where people feel free,
Yeah.
feel empowered, feel like they have a voice,
Mm-hmm.
and we recognize, like as a leader, my job is to recognize their strengths
Right.
and then help develop their weaknesses, and that encourages them, that helps them run in their own lane really,
Mm-hmm.
really well, to where then they're even recommending things in another lane that we would have never seen had their eyes
Right.
not been on it. And so I think we have to see people differently. We have to see people as whole beings, like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about at the very beginning, body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah.
They, and be aware of who they are as a whole person,
Yeah.
and lead them that way.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, makes sense. It makes me think of a picture like as a leader, you just go up the stairs. Just keep going up the stairs. You'll have exhausting moments, but just keep going up. Just keep going up, and that raises them up to be higher and
Oh, you're bringing them up with
bring
you
them
as
up.
long
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Sparta kick,
yeah. And a lot of times I want to push them up higher than me, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to kick them up the steps before me, and if they fall back, I got them.
Yeah.
And one of the things I told Sarah, she works for me, one of the first things I told her after I hired her, and I said, "No, I've got your back.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what. I don't care if we all look stupid, I'll take the blame for it.
Mm-hmm.
I have your back. Always come to me, and and I'll celebrate you,
Yeah.
and I'll help you. And if you fall, I'll be there to pick you up."
Yeah.
And I told her that immediately, so she knew that I was safe. And guess what? We both of us stumbled every once in a while, and she's absolutely amazing. She's
Oh yeah,
near
she's
perfect.
done so
She's a
much.
rock star. But I end up celebrating her a lot because
Mm-hmm.
she's so easy to celebrate, number one.
Yeah.
But if there is an issue, she's not afraid of it,
Mm.
because I'm not going to sit there and judge her. There's not, I don't have a thumb on her.
Like she has the freedom to express and just be
Yeah.
real with it. Like
Yeah, it's fine. But I will go to bat for her.
mm,
I will protect her. If
yeah.
someone's going after her or interrupting her work or whatever, I will be there
Mm-hmm.
and stand in the gap for her. And so I feel like leaders need to do that better,
Mm-hmm.
for their team members. But
In regards to like in your experience, I mean, ballpark, how many churches have you worked with? Hundreds? Are you in the thousands yet?
are you talking about with chemistry or?
Yeah, with chemistry or on your own
Well,
thing? Because you said they both kind of like intertwine with each
they
other a little
do.
bit.
I mean, I think personally, we've been a part of maybe 11 or 12 congregations.
Okay.
We help plant, or actually, it'll be more than that because I did some virtually. I was helping
Okay.
with Kelability. And then through chemistry, it's been hundreds.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So follow-up question with that. In your experience, on what percentage level do you find leaders lacking the ability to take charge from? It could be burnout, it could be poor communication, it could be culture. It could be a culture thing, it could be a life thing, like they got a million things going on the outside, so it's impacting their afflictions, not the right word, not attendance, but just like arrival. Like when they show up, they're ready to go. They're ready to have that moment. Like how much do you or have you experienced that? And what would you say the solution would be for that?
Yeah, that's a loaded
That's a loaded
question.
question.
It really is big. I think every leader goes through a season. There's seasons of
Yeah.
ministry, and every leader goes through seasons where they've taken on too much or there's too much expected of them.
Okay.
And I think, when you take on too much, you have the ability to offload some things. And
Yeah.
so, but you don't know that until you're already
Until
almost to
you're in it,
burnout.
and yep, yeah.
So, I think that um I'm trying to, because it's so big. I'm
To
trying to,
piggyback, you always
yeah.
have to have grace for that, right? But like,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
so, think of it, maybe I'll reword it. Think of like, what are some of the solutions you've implemented to get that goal rising, to get that vision back in like peak
I
mode
mean, I
for.
think some of it starts from the top. We talk a lot about benefits. Like everybody thinks of a job as, pay, salary, and
Mm-hmm.
benefits. Well, let's rethink benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think about benefits as a little more time off.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to cost money, right? Or maybe it's some flexibility, work
Mm-hmm.
from home flexibility. Maybe it's really how you solve that is to help leaders understand how to lead their teams better
Mm-hmm.
with clarity, with flexibility, with purpose. And so the better we do as leaders, the more healthy our teams will be.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I looked at Sarah and I said, "Hey, you put in an extra day. Make sure you take a day off."
Yeah.
I'm like riding her case to take a day off.
Yeah.
And so I want her to be healthy for the long term. And
Right.
so I love her enough and I care well and I want to lead her well. And so to make sure, and all of a sudden she'll answer a text or something during a day off, and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, I said, this is supposed to be for Monday, and so I am teasing. I want her to feel flexible. I don't want to lord over her in any way, but like I want her to know that I'm protecting her
Yeah.
time and that she has the ability to push back and there's
Yeah.
grace for all of that. So I think I think the key is leading others well and leading yourself well.
Mm-hmm.
So leading yourself well may look like, hey, for instance, when I got hired on at Northgate, I looked at Chris and I said, you may need to help save me from me because
Mm-hmm.
I will do everything. Like I will just dive in.
Dive in and go
So
after
so
it.
I'm going to really work hard on doing what you've asked me to do
Mm-hmm.
in this sphere, and if you want me to do more, ask.
Yeah.
So I needed the accountability from him. So I knew myself well enough to communicate what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
So I see church people jumping from church to church to church, being burnt out instead of communicating and leading themselves well. They could have long, rich ministry in their current situations if
Mm-hmm.
they were to just stick around and lead themselves well. At the same time, the lead pastors don't always allow them
Mm-hmm.
to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be both
Right.
because
Yeah,
you
100%.
can't do one without the other. I can always lead myself well, but I can't limit myself or put good boundaries on myself if the church isn't allowing me.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
that makes perfect sense. So in communicating, how do you go about teaching the communicational piece? Because I feel like that's such a detrimental thing for not just for leaders or
yeah.
anybody in power position or authority, but like just general people who do show up and who maybe, like I think for me, I'm working on my communication better to where I'm more effective in what I say, not just like
Yes.
blurting out express. No, I'm expressional. I can be a very expressional person, kind
No.
of like what I'm doing right now, like
What?
just getting to the point of things. And So yeah, how do you go about teaching that quality of communication, and even to a point on the other side, healthy confrontation, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, that's so important. And again, that centers around trust.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
absolutely does. So communication, at the bare minimum, we need to be answering emails and uh, texts and everything. I mean, bare minimum. If
Yeah.
we're not doing that, we're not developing trust.
Yeah.
So if you're leaving emails unread and never answering them, what are you communicating
Mhm.
that you're not communicating?
Right.
You're communicating that you're not important enough for me to respond to,
Mm.
and that um, there's question marks around. You never have an answer, right?
Mhm.
So there's always questions, and it creates insecurity. It creates fear,
Mhm.
and you don't want to create that. So bare minimum, have a policy of some sort, whether it's a personal policy or a team policy that says answer emails within 24 hours
Mhm.
and or texts, if you can answer them within 5 hours. However, if it's clearly someone's day off, don't answer.
Mhm.
It's on your work day.
Yeah.
So churches are a little different because you have emergencies that happen. There are
Right.
definitely, you got to be a little flexible. But at the bare minimum, respond,
Mhm.
because you're going to create the insecurity and lack of trust on your team and
Mhm.
in your congregation. As team members, the quality of communication is really important. Like I always ask someone, "What's the best way to communicate with you?"
Mhm.
And then I try to honor that because I remember somebody said they submitted a request and then um, they were like, "Hey, did you get my request?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I responded to you that same day." And oh, I don't check my email. I'm like, "Well, how am I supposed?"
Yeah.
So my I should have said, why how can I respond to you better, like
Yeah.
in the future. And so I think we have to be sensitive to the fact there's a lot of forms of communication.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting pinged here and
I have
I think
people communication on just Instagram now and Messenger.
alone,
It's like,
alone,
oh my gosh, and
every
Facebook
platform,
Messenger, and
right? So
here's my number. Like,
text, WhatsApp, all the things, right? And so, you're juggling a lot and you can't be expected to be on 100% of the time. However, when you're in a place of leadership and it's your team or your
mhm.
congregation, they need to be priority. And so making sure that they feel cared for in that process. I think
Yeah.
that's really how you do it. And as far as, I think creating open communication in like a meeting setting where you can say, "Hey, this is how you can communicate with me well." Just have honest,
Open dialect
uh,
and
open dialogue
yeah.
about that. I think it helps everybody understand because, one person may over explain something and another person may totally like go to sleep
Mhm.
before they even get finished. Give them high level and let them ask questions,
Yeah.
to clarify things. So we're constantly learning and never feel like you've shown up.
Mhm.
You've never figured it all out.
Right.
Like I'm still learning. It's been about 2 years that I've been at the church
Okay.
in this capacity, and I'm
Yeah.
still learning stuff, and I will forever be learning
Yeah.
how to communicate. But I think having the expectation, setting the baseline expectation, number one, and number two is building that trust so that we know that when we communicate and may not come across the way you meant to, there's still trust and love there,
Right.
and we can get clarity
Yeah.
um, in the middle of that. So
Yeah. That's good. I really like that. It just highlights a lot, just the whole communication piece, because it's as much as communication you can do now through like visual arts or
hmm
through, and you can communicate a ton of stuff
oh yeah,
without ever saying anything.
oh yeah,
And in process, I just feel like in when you're doing life with people, or chemistry staffing, and when you're on staff at the church, like, communications priority number one, healthy confrontation priority number two,
oh
having
yeah,
that trust
confrontation.
factor, having that, like, just all the eggs in the basket so that you can see everything, and vice versa.
And even with confrontation, I think that we're constant. I'm constantly saying, "Hey, Here's what I think. Feel free to push back.
Mm.
I'm always giving people permission
To push back a little bit. Yeah.
so that if I'm, I don't want them to ever feel like what I'm saying is a fact.
Is definitive.
It is definitive. There's always flexibility
Yeah.
within that. And I'd always have to be right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong most of the time, so
Yeah.
it's fine. But I mean, I don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to think I speak confidently. So I have to be very careful about how I communicate.
Well, do you think speaking confidently can create an atmosphere of not having the freedom to push back? Because you saying that, it made me wrestle with something, because I can be a very confident person
Yeah,
at times.
I think,
but I'm always open to adjustment or shift or change or.
I honestly think there are a lot of confident people who love feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But because of other people's insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
they're not, or maybe lack of relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe we're confident, but we didn't go deep in a relationship with this person enough to have them feel safe to give us feedback.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
So that's one aspect of it. But yeah, I think that because we're bolder, we're more confident.
Mm-hmm.
People will say that I'm intimidating, and I think, me?
Until they get to know you,
I'm
it's like
I trip over my own feet. Like, I am not that intimidating,
Yeah.
So I love to learn. I love to to learn about people and things. And so
Right.
I'm a thinker, and so I'm confident in a lot of things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have it all figured out. And I
Yeah.
think if people get to know me, they understand that. They understand where I'm at. And I have insecurities like everybody else.
Right.
But there are certain things I'm super confident in, and certain things that will make me cry.
Yeah.
It's just who I am.
It's human nature.
It's human nature.
Human nature.
So be mean to me, and it will hurt my feelings. It does. It hurts my feelings. Or I'll get mad at you.
Yeah. And then later on, it'll hurt my feelings.
And then I'll cry.
Oh, that's so funny. I love that. I had a random question.
Okay.
How do I want to say this? Touching base on personalities again, because I just, this type of, what I'm going to ask you has always been fascinating to me. In dealing with different personalities, if somebody tells me to do something, depending on my relationship with them,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it at a drop of the hat, or I'll go, well, why do you need me to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've distinctively been able to narrate both those situations in my life. But when you're dealing with people who haven't learned to navigate those, how do you get them to a point or position in their life to start taking like more leadership qualities of that, to where they're not necessarily having to like rely on you in your position, constantly asking for permission, but where they're actually getting to a point where they can just make a decision and they know it's going to be okay.
But I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is it's up to the leader,
Mm-hmm.
right, to give them authority.
Mm-hmm.
And create the trust, and then ask them good questions. If I hired a person, they have good qualities.
Right.
I've vetted them. I've asked them good questions in the interview. I know what they're capable of. So if I don't trust them, shame on me.
Mm-hmm.
Shame on me. So I feel like part of that is, okay, are you asking me for clarity or for assurance?
Okay. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah. So, someone comes to me and says, can I do this and this? Well, can you?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So if you're asking, are you asking me for clarity that I can help you? So for instance, I have a collaboration call with two people. We all have two other people. All three of us have different gifts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, well, I don't think we need to meet this week. And one of them will say, okay, but I want to meet because I have this project that I'm working on and I need your brain on this thing.
Okay.
Okay. So he's recognizing the fact that I have a skill that he needs to fill a gap
Yeah.
in his area. And so I find that through all three of us, we're collaborating, we're, putting our heads together, and
Mm-hmm.
each one of us brings our strengths. That's our ultimate goal,
Yeah.
right? So getting back to your question is, am I as a leader giving space for and asking the right questions and giving allowances for mistakes, for questions from the employee or from
Mm-hmm.
that person enough? Because if they don't feel safe with me, that's my problem.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's fair.
If they don't feel safe with me and I've made a ton of effort and they have trauma,
Mm-hmm.
then I, as a leader, need to go to them and say, okay, let's work through this.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what, it's on me
Yeah.
as the leader. So it, yeah, I can be confident, but my job is to instill confidence in them and in them,
Mm-hmm.
and create the confidence within themselves to run.
Yeah.
And not I'm not babysitting them. At the beginning, I'm walking with them, and then I say, "Are you good? Can you do
Mm-hmm.
it yourself?" Check in with them, and
Yeah.
then they're on their own. And then I'm there for check-ins.
Yeah.
How can I help you solve problems? What can I do to support you? What are your next steps in ministry?
Yeah.
So then now I have people who are making decisions for themselves and running on their own and feeling confident in their space
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not lording over them.
Right.
And I've set them up for it, communicated well enough at the beginning and trusted them early enough
Mm-hmm.
that they can run.
Yeah.
If I keep giving them pieces and bits and don't give them information, they're always going to have to come back to me.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
And I'm not setting them up for success, and I'm making myself burn out.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. I like that. I really appreciate that. um, how do people? You mentioned was it Kellyability?
Kelability.
Kelability. What is that?
So that's just my consulting, coaching. It's kind of my catch-all.
Kelability. I like
Yeah.
that.
I remember the day I thought of that name. I was walking with my friend, and I was just like, "Bing!"
And it's like that works.
It just and
Flows.
the domain was available.
Yeah, there you
So
go. That's always a
I
winner.
know it's always, and it's short. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So I what I don't like about the name is that it's centered around me, and I like to empower other people. So
But that's kind of
I
like a whole brand
know.
piece
I
though, you
know, but
know?
I really like it to be about the team. So I had hired people for Kelability and everything. I had a team of people,
Okay.
and I just hated that my name was in it.
Okay.
But it works now that it's more of a
And you're still
boutique-ish.
doing that and up and running it?
I am. I've gotten rid of a lot of the clients just so that I can hone in on my two
Okay.
main jobs, but I still do coaching and consulting and some calls on the side.
And is this majority like with a group of people, or is it individual, or it just
It just
depends?
depends.
Yeah.
It's as needed. Yeah,
And are those in person or online?
both.
Both. Okay. That works. Accessibility, got to make it happen.
Kelability is accessibility, right?
Kelability. Oh, there you go. Is that your tagline?
No.
There you go. Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Well, this was super fun and it went by really, really fast.
Is it done already?
Yeah, I mean, I can
Wow.
keep going,
No.
but I know you got a life. So,
I only have a few things to do.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, how do people sign up for chemistry staffing? I always give like a shout out. So
Oh,
if you
yeah.
want to say where people can find it, when this video hits 1 million views,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
organization needs to get in contact with
Yeah, we
someone.
do coaching and consulting there as well. So, like, if you're restructuring your staff, if you're, you have a succession, your pastor's about to retire and you
Oh,
need
okay.
a succession plan. I mean, we do all of that stuff. So, if you have any church related or church health related item, you can always reach out to chemistrystaffing.com. We have, you could actually just contact me, Kelly.Norris at chemistrystaffing.com, and I would be able to answer any questions because I kind of have created systems to
Mm-hmm.
do all of that. But yeah, we really feel like our whole goal and our mission is to make the church healthier. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why the organization was started. It wasn't necessarily just to help
Okay.
staff churches. It was really just to say, okay, if we have healthy people
Had a
and
goal
we're
in
making
mind.
them better and we're staffing them in churches, then the churches are going to be healthier.
Yeah.
And we also have the Healthy Church Staff podcast that Todd Rhodes puts out. He does a daily podcast. It's really good. And it's only like 5-10 minutes long
Okay.
every day, every work day. And it's just those little nuggets
Yeah.
that help you be a better leader, better pastor, and stay up to date with current stuff. So that's really awesome.
Cool.
And then if you ever wanted to reach out to me, Kelly at Kelability.com, you can email me there and I'd be happy to respond.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this has been super fun. Thank you
Yeah,
for coming
I always
on.
love talking to you.
Ballin'.